On today's episode of the Pool Pro podcast, host and pool business builder Michelle Cavanaugh discusses the purpose of a website and how it should work to grow your business. Many do it wrong, so listen up as designer and web developer Nathaniel Boyle helps us make our websites better. The podcast starts now. Welcome back to the Pool Pro podcast. This is Michelle Cavanaugh, co-host of the podcast. You'll notice that my other co-host, Dave Rockwell, is not with us today. So we're here today with a special guest that I have known for a couple of years. I work with. He's developed a couple of websites for me. I'm very excited to have him on. And that would be Nate Boyle. Welcome, Nate. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Hey, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, this topic about website design and implementation and inception and all of that is really a necessary evil, Nate. And no offense to you as a webmaster and designer, because those of us in business, we have to have a website. In today's world, you know, people are doing all of their searching on Google and the power of Google. If you don't have a website that pops up, people can look at, to me, you're obsolete as a business. Now, the other side of that is if you do have a website and they go to it and it's a piece of junk, that's almost equally as bad. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say two thoughts. One, you certainly can shoot yourself in the foot if you don't have yourself a good web presence, right? And then on top of that, I think that perhaps the more nuanced way of explaining that would be not so much a website necessarily as much as it's like an established web presence. Now, the best way to establish a web presence and to have full control of that is, of course, through a website. I think there are plenty of people that are making, do with a social media presence or, even just relying on landing pages or landing page software. But ultimately, if you want to control your messaging and your brand and, your presence and how Google talks to you or reads your, or shares your discoverability information, that's, website's your tool.
Is your tool. What is your background? Because again, I worked with you for a couple of years, but what is your background? Just so people understand who you are.
Sure. Oh man, my background is all over the map.
Like most of us, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, so it started a long time ago at Boston University, studying, film and philosophy and doing fun things like that. And then out of college, realizing there, if I don't want to work in Hollywood, there's not a lot that I can do with those degrees. So I ended up working for a company for a couple of years, and then I stepped away from that company to travel the world, and went around the world for a whole year, changed my life, completely blew my mind, got back home, said, well, I can't not keep doing that as much as I, can. And so I tried to figure out how I could sort of repack my metaphorical parachute and learn some skills that I could take on the road with me. So this was, this was probably 15 years ago. I just kind of started looking into, I studied graphic design. I studied web design. I studied, coding HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP. And then I took a job with BU and really learned, BU being Boston University. They have like this world-class interactive design program that taught.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's really fascinating. It's all part of their marketing communications program. But this was me in my like early 20s, realizing that if you can imagine something online, you can build it. You can make it happen. You can create that experience. It's doable.
You can.
And it should, your imagination and your for what's possible should be expansive. And so I kind of took that information and ran with it and studied under some really great people until I got the confidence to go and do it on my own. And then in 2010, I think maybe 11, I left. I gave my 2 weeks notice to go and try freelancing. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing. So it really started in visual design, and then development, and then the more clients you get, the more people you work with, the more you realize that websites are not just these brochures that you design online. They need to be fully functioning applications that serve a purpose and have a utility for the person that is using them. And I needed to gain a more holistic understanding of exactly what I was building, and that
Yes.
sent me down this rabbiting market hole. And my little freelance, you know, business eventually kind of morphed into a small agency of personal scale, and that's what I've been primarily focused on for just over 10 years now.
10 or 11 years, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I'm going to say too, Nate, about graphic design, which I don't do, but I go on Canva and do little teeny things for like Facebook or whatever. But
Yeah.
the one thing that I would have never forgotten, that's I think a graphic designer taught me, gosh, 20 years ago, is that white space is a graphic. I think a lot of times
Yeah.
that a lot of people put way too much in their designs, and it's like there's not even a little bit of white space, and it's like, you know, it can really be powerful if you just have a lot of white space. You know, like even in the newspaper, when somebody buys a full page ad and it just has like a couple of words in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
powerful. That's power, and I don't think people realize that. So that's
Oh,
one
I
tip
mean,
that
if
I
you
remember that I'll never forget.
Yeah, and I mean, like these are cliche examples in the design world, but if you're not in the graphic design world and you've never noticed the arrow that's in the FedEx logo that's between the E and the X, you'll never not see it again for the rest of your life once you know it's there.
Right.
And it's
I don't think
so,
I've noticed it, so I'll have to
oh my
look.
God, next time look at a FedEx logo and you'll be like, oh my God, there it is. It's been there the whole time. And
I didn't notice it.
you will never not see it again every time you see it.
Yes. Well,
Um,
for me, websites too, Nate. For me, websites really are a sales tool
mhm,
for your business. And
mhm,
so, like you said, but they have to be fully functional to be able to do that. Because if you just
yeah,
have a bunch of words, you know, on a website, that's not going to do that for you. The power of the words, the power of the graphics, the power of video, if you have it, all of those things. And then, of course, full functionality with whatever they're clicking on or whatever the pages they're going to or whatever they're doing. I think that is so important. And it can be really simple because it doesn't have to be. I've seen websites that have, you know, 20 menu items across the top or 15 and like 8,000 pages. They don't have to be that complicated. They
right.
can be very simple and still be very functional and powerful, correct?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's why um, focusing on simplicity, focusing on conversion metrics for, you know, whatever it is that your particular goal is, and we can talk about that, but that, like, what is in service of those things, not in service of just putting everything you can out there, you know, not in service of trying to be as fancy as you can, but being as
Right.
functional as you can instead.
Absolutely. So just if you could just give me a couple of tips, Nate, a couple of
Yeah.
tips or what are the biggest mistakes people make on their website? Even, you know, just a couple of them. Can you
Yeah.
describe a few of those? Because I think a lot of us don't really know what we do wrong.
Sure. Okay. All right. You had mentioned this before, so I did a little thinking on what I think like some of the biggest mistakes are. There are certainly many, and
Yeah.
we could get into like minutia, like typography or colors or all that stuff. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to try to be a little bit more general with the mistakes that I think I see most websites making. When I land on a website that suffers from these mistakes, this is the stuff that like keeps me up at night, right? Um, so
Nightmares.
yeah. All right. So the first one to me is really like the overall form of the website, like the holistic construction of your website from the front facing design to the back end code. And that means, you know, the front end design and back end code being optimized for all devices and for search engine optimization so that they're reliant, so that the code is compliant with all browsers, and so that the information is structured within the code, within each different tag. You want to be intentional about what goes inside of your H1 tags. And did you include all of the necessary metadata that's there? And is
And what do
your
you call that when they're going to look at all search tags? That you're not talking about mobile phones. You're talking about just all browsers.
yeah, so
That's
I
different than what's
I realized
mobile
that
ready or whatever.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, so I'm kind of lumping a bunch of in the interest of covering my bases here. I'm
Right.
kind of lumping a bunch of things in together. But the
Right.
fact is that if your site is not um, fast, like lightning fast and as fast as it can be, if your site is not coded correctly, if your site is not serving Google in the way that Google needs it to be, you are not going to be optimized for the search engines and for Google, you know?
Gotcha.
So if your site does not render properly on mobile devices, Google is going to knock you down a notch. So that
Right.
matters. And so that's part of the design. And that it's all part of, you know, the HTML and the CSS being constructed on the back end in accordance to what Google is looking for.
And I think too, the something I've learned recently is that within the algorithms that Google changes probably weekly, who knows?
Yeah.
User experience is a big part of it now. So, going to your website and being on your website for 3 seconds versus whatever, or all those kinds of things that matters to Google now.
It does. It does. I mean, so that and being optimized for different browser widths and device sizes, being code, making sure that your code is compliant, not broken, and speed. Speed is not just how it's built and how well it's constructed. Like on your side, or whether or not you've compressed all of your images to make sure that the page loads as fast as it can, but also your server speed. And that's something that I offer my clients, is making sure that they are running on on servers that that I maintain and that I watch, keep a watchful eye over, to make sure that they're serving up the site quickly to and then also setting up and running Cloudflare, so that no matter where you are in the country, you get served a lightning fast cached version of your website that's held on Cloudflare servers all over the world. So there's a lot.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into the overall construction and design of your website that is more than just what people are looking at. And that's really what
that's the biggest mistake people make.
That is the biggest, is kind of like overlooking something's broken, something's overlooked, and there's just there's a checklist of things you have to go through, and it has to be built, and the information has to be served in the code specifically. And if you have a designer and a developer that knows SEO too, which are not that easy to find, if you have somebody like that, then it can save you tons of like headache and heartache later on. The other two things that I wanted to add here as biggest mistakes that I see are, one is, so many people, I think, have a antiquated or arcane mindset about websites as like, and what their function is. Once upon a time in 1985, people would build these basic websites, and it would just be like, here's my business. And it would be akin to taking a brochure and pinning it on a bulletin board at your local coffee shop, right? And just being like, this is what my business is all about. Call this number and we'll talk, that is fine, but it's not going to drive any business for you. It's not going to grow your list, and it's not going to do anything that is much more goal oriented that you can then measure, track, and improve on. And then leverage down the line. So for instance, if you, instead of just presenting all of your information up front, if you think about this thing as an application for marketing conversions, how do you build that? How does a user then, find your site and then engage with that application? And what is the end goal of that? What is that? And then that leads me to the final mistake, which is really not having a clear call to action. This is why a lot of people will even forsake entire websites just for landing pages, and it works depending on the business model. But it's simply because the end goal is something that's transactional, and that transaction can be an opt-in to your email list. It could be an opt-in to a free consultation call. That's what I have on my website. Or it can be a sales transaction,
or buy something.
Exactly. Or buy something. So it's like, trade me, maybe I'm going to give you something for free in exchange for your email address, or maybe I'm going to give you something in exchange for your money. But I feel like my website should be in service of the business, and not in service of passively giving someone like, hey, call me if you feel like it. Here's my business. Give us a call if you want. It's like, no, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to incentivize our interaction right out of the gates. That should be the first thing that anybody sees when they land on your website. So conversion, really, ignoring conversion is probably the single biggest mistake I see, because it serves no marketing function.
And the call to action is so important. And people make this mistake not just on websites, but in every promotional email campaign and everything they do. There's not a clear call to action, which I've always been touting that, in all my marketing days from the back, is, an email campaign, you got 20 million things on it and 18 different things they can click on. No. Do not do that. You can send them another email next week with the next topic. You don't put it all into one and give them too many options, because if they have too many options, they're not going to do anything.
That's it. I mean, give them on your homepage one or two options tops.
Yes.
And I would say one. If you can distill it down, if you can distill your website down into one option, make the website be in service of that goal. And
Right.
all the other information, all of the like, hey, they look, if somebody finds your business, your website for your business, they know they can get in touch with you. They
Yeah.
know that you're a business and that,
Yeah.
you
There's a
know,
phone number and email somewhere that they can click on,
yeah.
or
And so they
yeah.
could send you an email and say, hey, I'm interested in this, you know, and, but what do you want the website to do for your business on a
Right.
passive basis? Design for that. Or like, is it to grow your email list so that then when you finally launch a product, you can get in front of, you know, that email list and you can be
Right.
intentional about it? If so, then what can you offer up to somebody that lands on your website that solves an immediate problem for them that is so irresistible that they immediately give you their email address, and then they
Yes.
get that, and then it's up to you to nurture that little seed that they just planted and get it to sprout into a customer.
Yes, absolutely. What should people watch out for? Because everybody claims to be a webmaster or web designer these days.
Hmm.
Nate, is there a way for somebody to maybe, should they have a portfolio of their work? Should they provide you with something that says, I have value, or I do good work? Or how do we, steer clear of those people out there that claim they really know what they're doing and don't?
Yeah,
Any clues?
that's a good question. And you know, some of it is really going to come down to even like on a personal basis, like finding somebody that you like working with,
Yeah, that is
that you
big.
click with,
Relationship
right?
all the way.
So I think that's like kind of through all of the thick and thin, that's kind of what matters the most in the end. Like you and I, we've had such a good working relationship for so long, I think, because
Yeah.
we work well together. I mean, I
Yes,
think that's become
agreed.
very apparent. And so it's like, if you find somebody like that, wow, that's lucky. The other thing is skill sets, specialization versus generalization. There is no right or wrong way to be. I will freely admit that I am a more generalized person here. And as I said, you know, I started in visual design, moved into development, and then moved into marketing strategies and consulting.
Gotcha. Okay.
I can do all of those things at a professional level. I have learned that's pretty unusual. For the most part, you find a developer, you know, and you can find this developer as your next door neighbor or someone in Romania, you know,
Right.
and their prices are going to be different. Their skill sets and their familiarity with stuff is going to be different. But ultimately, what you want is, if you're gonna go after somebody that's specialized, make sure they're really good, you know, and make sure you understand what you're investing in. There are web designers out there who know how to put together a functional website, but they're more of like front end designers. And so they're going to put
Yes.
together something that looks pretty, but they're not going to know anything about the architecture of the code and how to serve up Google through that. And then you're going to have to go and find somebody who does search engine optimization. And then you're going to have to go and find somebody, you know, that does WordPress, you know, hosting or maintenance or management or whatever,
Right.
you know, and
Exactly.
all these different, all these, to me, I always liked being able to learn each of these things so that I can maneuver accordingly for my clients. And then if we need to take it to a next level, you know, I'm very confident in my design skills. I've done it at a professional level. I've designed magazines, and, you know, I think I'm very good. I also know that there are like mind-blowingly good designers out there, and in the event that somebody needs to work with them, having somebody like me in control of almost the creative direction aspect of bringing in a good designer to really take your brand to the next level. I can both consult on the sense that it's like, okay, well, let's be careful. You know, do we need to spend money here? And if we
Right.
do, then let's get the right person with the right, you know,
And I love that
with
about
the
you
right
too, Nate,
approach.
because even with my website and the previous company I worked for, you did their website as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to just gouge me for every penny. You're like, let's be smart about this.
No.
This is what you should
Yeah.
have right now on the back end of your website. And these are what the things you have to have an account set up and subscribe to. But you're so great at, being mindful of the dollar so that I'm not, paying for stuff I don't need.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I want
Yeah.
you to succeed. I
Yeah.
think gouging a client makes no sense, because you're only making it more difficult for them to succeed.
Right.
And the long-term relationship that you develop with your clients is the most lucrative thing to
In every
prioritize
business.
in every
Yes.
business. Yeah. So
So
that's
Nate,
it. You know.
tell us about your company. So what if somebody, and by the way, for
Mhm.
those of you who are just listening on the audio only version of this. Go to the YouTube channel, Pool Pro Podcast on YouTube. You can subscribe there, but you can also look at the description of this particular video, and there will be a link to Nate's website there where you can actually learn more about his services. But tell us,
Cool.
Nate, if somebody were to schedule a consultation, what kind of services would you offer up that they could learn more about?
Yeah. So my company is Wander or Wonder. It's WNDER, intentionally vague.
Which
I
I
tend to
love.
like to travel, and I tend to like to I'm intellectually curious. So wonder and wander are kind of two fun words for me. So I kind of smashed them together and did WNDER. And on my site, I offer a little free consultation if anybody, wants to explore how to bring their brand to life. And by brand, I really mean web presence. I really mean, how do
Yeah.
we take the necessary steps to make sure that the digital footprints that you're leaving as you wander through the internet are not lost, and that they're
Right.
intentional, and that they're beautiful. And then I work on delivering premium level design with and marrying that with the latest trends in digital marketing. And my real goal is to find for my business is to find clients that I can create an ongoing partnership with and help
Yeah.
them succeed. So really the idea is a lot of my clients, I think I remember when I started out, I was concerned that, these people will hire me and then they'll just hire somebody full time that they can have more control over and whatever. And I think that
Right.
I never really saw that happen, because I realized that employee overheads are just incredibly expensive
They
and
are.
kind of a
Agreed.
pain. And having to manage somebody is like, instead of being able to just lean on somebody else that provides you that level of in-house talent, but without the employee overheads, that really kind of informed my business. And so I started structuring monthly retainer plans for pretty much any project or business size, so that it's flexible and fluid. And then I could just build my business from there.
Right.
So I offer my clients anything, packages on branding,
Yeah.
on like brand design and logo design, if that's like where you're at and you need to, either you have a brand presence or you want to take it to the next level, or you're just getting started and you have an idea. And a lot of the time I will get a message from somebody that's like, hey, I'm just starting out, I'm getting my business out there, I really need a logo and a
Right.
website. And it's like, okay, well, look, that's great, I'm going to talk to you, let's have a consultation call. And then we can really talk about, like, all right, do you really want to spend money on a logo right now, or is it more important that your business gets discovered on
Right.
Google or something like that?
And people get bad advice in that regard too. Everybody says something different. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of people are just kind of like, well, this person wants a logo, so I'm going to design for them a logo. But I don't think that a
Right.
logo
Right.
really serves a minimum viable product when you're trying to get a business off the ground in like a bootstrapped fashion, right? So I try to like really dial in on like what it is, like one-on-one with, on a client by client basis, on what it is that they need, what's gonna be of best overall long-term value for them to invest in right now, because I know that there's something and I know that I can help with that. So let's just
Right.
figure out what that is, come up with a plan and move forward on that. And then on top of that, it's like web design packages, web development packages, or monthly designer development retainers. And
Yeah.
those extend into marketing strategies as well. So like one of I will offer content management pretty much. So it's like, if you have a website, you have a membership website, or you have a blog and you need these things updated on a regular basis to serve the audiences or to serve the members, that's the kind of thing that I can do. Anywhere from simply receiving the copy and copy pasting and publishing, or even doing the copywriting myself.
Yeah.
And so that's the
So
amount
really
of
think anything from
skills that
inception to full on launch and hosting, and
that's
then
it.
packages to keep it updated and everything afterwards.
That's it. That's exactly it. I mean, all
Yeah.
this stuff is when you've been doing this for as long as I've been doing this, you get a really good understanding of um, every step of the way from a marketing perspective and from a development perspective, in terms of site speed, presentation of content, and what it takes to run these things and do it
Right.
effectively. So I'm I like to think of myself as like an ace in the hole for my clients.
Yes. And I can attest to that as a testimonial, because Nate has been wonderful to work with. It's so helpful to have you to be able to run Ideas by Two. Nate's been great for me, and I highly recommend him. Not just because I work with him, but because I have experience, and that experience leads to the fact that I know that you're getting a quality product when you do business with Nate. So that's great. Nate, thank you so much for coming on today. I really wanted people to understand how powerful websites are and why they should be really, taking into consideration what their website looks like, and if it's functional and doing everything it needs to do from a sales tool, but also from a Google perspective, and how you're really seen online and indexed and all those different things that happens with a website. I think that's so important. So I can't tell you again how much I appreciate working with you. And I think that anybody out there who needs some assistance and just needs some direction, he is a perfect candidate to do that.
Thank you, Michelle. Feelings mutual. And I appreciate you, having me on here and to talk about this stuff. I love chatting about this kind of thing.
Yes.
And to that point, that if anybody wants to, discuss what they think they might need, or what I would consider that, or what I would suggest that they do, I offer free consultations on this kind of thing. So you can go to wonder.cc. That's WNDER.cc. Yes. And there you will see buttons all over the place, because I'm a big call to action fan, to book a free consultation call and set that up. I would love to jump on, talk to you about what you think you need. And hopefully, maybe it can be the start of a beautiful friendship.
Absolutely. Love it. Thank you so much, Nate. We appreciate it. Have a wonderful, I know he's in Colorado, which I love, and I'm here, happen to be here right now, but you're not in Alaska or wherever the lights are.
I wish I had the Aurora Borealis right behind me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
A new voice in the industry, a resource for all, education for you. This is Pool Pro Podcast. Build relationships and share important news as we get ready for our next backyard adventure. Pool Pro Podcast. Backyard adventures are better together. Please take a moment to share, like, and review our content with all of those that would be interested.